I still remember the moment my parents pulled out of the driveway on Friday afternoon. The sky was a brilliant blue, and there was a crisp breeze that ruffled the curtains in our living room. Mum leaned out of the car window to remind me, one last time, to lock the doors, feed the dog, and remember to turn off the stove after heating my dinner. Dad gave me a thumbs up, and then they were gone, off on their weekend getaway to celebrate their anniversary. I was just old enough to be trusted, home alone at 16, and I could feel that small thrill of freedom tingle in my stomach. It wasn't my first time alone, but it felt different, like a glimpse into the independence I'd have in just a few short years. I had the entire house to myself, and I decided to spend the evening sprawled on the couch, catching up on my favorite TV shows. The hours floated by in a haze of sitcom reruns and texting with friends. My mom tried calling me around dinner time, likely to check if I'd ordered pizza, but I silenced the call, figuring I'd talk to her later. My phone was always buzzing, and I didn't think twice about ignoring it. After all, I just wanted to enjoy the peace and quiet. Before long, I realized it was close to midnight. My back ached from lying on the couch all evening, so I decided a hot shower might help me relax before bed. I climbed up the stairs, flipping on all the lights one by one, just to fight off that strange uneasiness of being the only one in the house. The walls creaked in ways I never noticed when my parents were around, and the quiet halls seemed to echo with my every step. Trying to ignore that slight edge of paranoia, I stepped into the bathroom, locked the door, and turned on the shower. Steam billowed around me, comforting and warm. As the water cascaded over my shoulders, I closed my eyes, letting the day's tension wash away. My thoughts drifted. Maybe I'd make scrambled eggs in the morning and then invite my friend over. Maybe I'd stay in bed until noon without anyone nagging me about chores. I heard my phone buzz from the sink, probably my mom calling again, but I decided to finish up and call her back in a few minutes. Nothing seemed urgent, and she always worried too much. I reached for the shampoo bottle on the corner shelf, standing on the slightly raised section of the bathtub floor. Suddenly, my foot slipped on a patch of soapy water, and I lost my balance. My heart lurched in my chest as I flailed for the shower curtain, but it tore off the hooks with a terrifying rip. My head whipped back, and for a split second, I was airborne, arms pinwheeling. Then came the sickening crack at the back of my neck as I collided with the hard porcelain. Pain shot through my body in a lightning bolt of agony, and my vision blurred with a sudden burst of tears. I couldn't even scream properly. The impact had stolen my breath. For a moment, I lay stunned, blinking at the bathroom ceiling, water still pounding on my skin. My mind raced to process what had just happened. I tried to move my arms, to push myself upright, but nothing responded. Panic closed in. I tried to wiggle my toes or even lift my leg, but my body remained unnervingly still. My chest felt tight, and my heart thumped in my ears like a drum. Breathing was labored, and the water splashing over my face made it hard to keep calm. I tried to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. My lips parted, but only a faint gurgle emerged. Was I paralyzed? My mind screamed in protest. This couldn't be happening. I was only 16, healthy and strong. Things like this didn't happen to people like me. The warm water quickly became a threat as the tub began to fill. My face was half submerged, and I struggled to lift my head out of the rising water. Every breath threatened to pull in more water than air. Seconds turned into minutes. My phone kept buzzing, each vibration a mocking reminder that help was just out of reach. Likely my parents, calling to check in, hearing nothing but the voicemail message I'd recorded months ago. I imagined Mom's face, brows creased with concern when I didn't pick up. She'd try again, maybe text me, when I didn't answer soon enough. Would she worry enough to call the neighbors? The police? My body was locked in place, the water level creeping up to my nostrils. If only I could tilt my head just a fraction more, I could breathe. But my neck refused to budge. I don't know how long it took before my parents truly panicked. Maybe it was an hour, maybe 2. By then, my mind was oscillating between shock and a terrifying clarity that whispered I wasn't going to get out of this. I choked on water as it sloshed over my face, my lungs burning every time I accidentally sucked in the tepid liquid. I attempted to cough, but all I managed was a feeble sputter. My vision clouded, and darkness edged at the corners of my consciousness. At some point, I heard faint vibrations in my ears, a pounding on the front door. Distant voices. I prayed it was help. My heart fluttered with a small spark of hope, but I had no way to call out, no means to unlock the door. Footsteps echoed in the hall, the distant crackle of a police radio. They must have broken down the front door. My parents must have called them. But it was too late. By the time the bathroom door burst open, by the time I felt the tug of strong arms pulling me out of the water, I was nearly gone. The water had filled my lungs, and I was drowning in my own bathtub. A haze of red and black swirled around me. My mouth was open, but no screams came. The paramedics who arrived moments later tried to resuscitate me, pushing on my chest, forcing air into my lungs. My body simply refused to cooperate. The world swam around me in dappled shadows, and I coughed weakly, tasting water in my throat. I felt something warm against my face, someone's hand. I heard muffled cries, a woman's voice wailing, "Oh God, my baby!" It was Mom. She must have sped back into town, heart pounding in fear when I never returned her calls. Dad's voice joined hers, though I couldn't distinguish the words. Sirens wailed outside, their lights flashing a dance of red and blue across the bathroom tiles. That was the last coherent moment I remember before the cold numbness overwhelmed me. My thoughts were slipping away, but my consciousness clung to the edges of reality. Unable to move, unable to speak, I realized I was dying, drowning there on the bathroom floor, despite the frantic efforts around me. My body had already betrayed me. In those final seconds, I formed words in my mind, words I hoped my parents could somehow sense, if not hear. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't pick up the phone. I love you so much. I'm scared. I don't want to go. But there was no voice to carry them. No breath left to speak them. Darkness consumed me, and my last thought was a silent plea, echoing in the void. I'm still here. Please don't leave me. I've always loved quiet nights at home. I work a busy schedule, and when the weekend arrives, all I want to do is sink into the couch with a blanket, a bowl of popcorn, and watch whatever mindless marathon is on TV. That's exactly what I was doing the night things changed forever. I remember flipping channels lazily, searching for something to keep me entertained, when I paused on a local news station. They were covering a live police chase somewhere downtown, with the helicopter camera tracking a sedan careening through empty streets at high speed. It was intense. The car flew through red lights, almost clipping other vehicles as sirens wailed in the background. Reporters chattered over one another, trying to keep up with the action. I turned up the volume, my heart pounding with excitement, almost as if it were a movie. But something about it felt too close to home. The chase was in my city, near streets I recognized. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, but I couldn't tear my eyes from the screen long enough to pick it up. The camera zoomed in on the suspect's car, showing the battered bumper and shattered rear windshield. Police cruisers closed in. Then, without warning, the sedan swerved down a residential street. My street. I felt the air leave my lungs as I recognized the row of houses that blurred by on the broadcast. My mind raced, trying to deny what my eyes were seeing. It was impossible. What were the odds? But it was happening, right there on live television. My stomach churned with a sickening realization. The driver was close, impossibly close. I leaped off the couch, my heart hammering, feeling the weight of dread in my chest. I peered out the window, just in time to see headlights flash across my lawn. The sedan screeched to a halt, practically on my doorstep, and my breath caught in my throat. For a moment, I froze in disbelief, my hand gripping the windowsill. This couldn't be real. Then the driver's door burst open, and a wild-eyed man stumbled out, panting, scanning the darkness like a cornered animal. My stomach lurched with terror. Police sirens were getting louder, but they hadn't turned down my street yet. I dropped to the floor, hoping he wouldn't see me through the window. My thoughts scrambled. Should I run? Should I call 911? I crawled to the kitchen, searching for my phone, but the screen was dark. A single crash shattered the silence as my front door burst open. I screamed involuntarily, stumbling back. The man, face contorted in desperation, practically fell into my foyer. He locked eyes with me, and I saw a flicker of madness there. He held a gun, trembling in his hand. "Don't move," he spat, shutting the door behind him in one swift motion. I was rooted to the spot, fear turning my legs to jelly. I raised my hands, tears spilling onto my cheeks. The living room TV was still playing, the news feed capturing the sirens that drew ever closer. He pressed the gun against my ribs. "I need to hide," he whispered, panic lacing his words. His breath was hot and smelled of sweat and tobacco. I nodded mutely, my lips unable to form any sound. I led him through the hallway, every nerve on fire, hoping he wouldn't pull the trigger. My heart hammered so loud I was sure he could hear it. In the distance I heard the screech of tires, police cars rounding the corner, their lights illuminating my front windows. For a fleeting moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Maybe they'd save me. Then I felt the barrel of the gun dig deeper into my side. "Keep moving," he hissed. He forced me into the back room, the one I used for storage. Boxes towered in the corners, making it a cramped space. He pulled the blinds shut and turned off the light, darkness swallowing us both. Outside, the flash of red and blue danced across the walls. I could hear the police shouting, doors slamming, footsteps pounding on the pavement. The newscast still blared from the living room, an eerie echo of the chaos happening in real time. Tears stained my face as I stood there in the dark, with a stranger's gun pressed against my back. My life felt unbelievably fragile, like a thin glass ornament in a violent storm. He peeked through a gap in the blinds, breathing heavily. "They're surrounding the house," he muttered, his voice shaking. In those brief seconds, something changed in his eyes. Resignation. He knew it was over. The police had him cornered. There was no escape. And me, just an innocent bystander, was now part of this nightmare he'd created. He swung around to face me, desperation twisting his features. "I can't go back to prison," he said softly, almost to himself. Then he lifted the gun. Everything froze. My heart constricted, and I opened my mouth to beg, but nothing came out but a whimper. A blast tore through the silent room. The impact felt like a sledgehammer to my chest. I stumbled backward, my legs giving way. My head spun with shock, warmth spreading across my torso. I heard another gunshot, and the man's body crumpled to the floor beside me. I tried to breathe, but my lungs refused to work. Darkness seeped into the edges of my vision, and my mind tumbled in confusion. Why was this happening? All I wanted was a quiet evening at home. The sound of police pounding on the windows, shouting demands, faded into the background like a distant dream. I gazed at the ceiling, the swirling lights painting ghostly patterns above me. Every beat of my heart slowed, each breath more laborious than the last. I thought of my family, of my life, of everything I'd hoped to accomplish. And then, with a shuddering exhale, I whispered the last words I would ever speak. I'm sorry. Darkness consumed me as the sound of the broken door crashing inward signaled the arrival of the police, seconds too late. I love a good rainstorm. There's something comforting about the sound of raindrops pounding on the roof, the flash of lightning that illuminates the sky, and the rumble of thunder rolling in the distance. Unfortunately, I also love my whiskey. The night the storm rolled in, I was several shots deep, enough that my vision blurred at the edges, and my limbs felt heavier than usual. It had been a rough week at work, and all I wanted was to drown my stress in a bottle. Outside, the wind howled like a beast. Rain battered the windows so hard I thought they'd shatter. Lightning streaked across the sky, followed by a deafening boom that rattled the entire house. I was planted on the couch, TV droning in the background, half aware of the storm's ferocity. My bottle of whiskey was the only companion I needed. At some point, I drifted off to sleep. My last memory was the flickering light of the TV dancing across the living room walls. I didn't hear the next thunderclap or the monstrous crash when lightning struck. I didn't hear the roof splitting open or the crackling of flames licking the rafters. I slept on, the alcohol numbing my senses to any danger. When I finally stirred, it was to an unbearable heat on my skin. My eyes shot open, and I saw flickers of orange light dancing across my living room. Confusion gripped me. The curtains were on fire. The couch I was lying on had started smoldering at the edges, thick black smoke swirling in the air. Panic jolted me upright, my heart hammering. The heat was unimaginable, and every breath clawed at my throat. I stumbled forward, half dazed, trying to find my bearings. Flames licked the walls, consuming my photographs, my furniture, my entire life. I could barely see through the billowing smoke. My lungs burned, and I coughed violently, eyes streaming with tears. The whiskey bottle slipped from my grasp, shattering on the floor. For a moment, I froze, mind scrambling to figure out what to do. Some distant, half-sober part of me remembered. Crawl low under the smoke. Get to a door or window. I dropped to my hands and knees, crawling across the scorching floor. The heat seemed to penetrate my skin. With every movement, I felt the fire biting at me, as if it had a mind of its own, hungry for flesh. I reached the front door, but the knob was searing hot. I yelped, snatching my hand back. My palms stung, blistering almost instantly. Swallowing my fear, I tried the side door to the kitchen instead, ducking past flames that had engulfed the ceiling. The door groaned when I pulled it open, sending a gust of smoke and sparks swirling around me. Somehow, I managed to throw myself outside onto the rain-soaked grass. Lightning still raked the sky, thunder booming overhead. Rain pelted me like cold nails. My mind was reeling. My house, my home, was being devoured by flames. Through bloodshot eyes, I saw the devastation. Lightning must have struck the roof, setting off a blaze that spread so quickly I never even woke. I was furious at myself for drinking too much to notice. Another crash of thunder jolted me back to reality, and I realized something horrifying. My skin was burning. It wasn't just the fire's heat. Flames had caught my clothes, and I was smoldering. Screaming, I tore off what remained of my shirt, rolling in the wet grass to snuff out the embers. Agony racked my body. I was burned, severely. I could see the raw flesh on my arms, and the pain was nearly unbearable. Gasping for air, I crawled further from the house, stumbling onto the street. One of my neighbors, braving the storm, spotted me and let out a shout. He rushed over with an umbrella, which felt laughable against the inferno behind me. But he was shouting for help, yelling at someone else to call 911. My vision blurred as the pain became overwhelming. A fire truck's wail cut through the storm, and paramedics arrived moments later, their voices a jumble of urgency and alarm. They laid me on a stretcher, the cold rain mixing with my hot tears. I felt their hands pressing against my wounds, trying to keep me conscious as they loaded me into the ambulance. I was shivering despite the heat. My mind swam with remorse. I hated the whiskey, hated my own negligence for putting myself in this position. The next few days were lost in a morphine haze. I drifted in and out of consciousness, machines beeping around me. My skin felt like it was being torn from my body. I remember waking once, only to find bandages wrapped around my torso, my arms, my hands. A nurse's sympathetic eyes met mine. "You've been through a lot," she whispered, checking my IV. "It's a miracle you made it out." Eventually I learned the truth. 3rd-degree burns covered a large portion of my chest and arms, some areas so severe they required grafts. My left hand and parts of my right foot were too damaged to save. The doctors had to amputate. Even in my drug-addled state, the weight of that news crushed me. The storm had changed my life forever. I could scarcely believe the reality that awaited me. Now, here I lie in this hospital bed, battered and broken. My home is gone, my limbs scarred or removed. Every breath is a reminder of the smoke that almost killed me, the fire that nearly claimed my life. The only comfort is knowing I'm still alive, though sometimes the pain and guilt make me question if it's a mercy or a curse. I don't know what the future holds, but the storm left me with a constant ache that will never fully go away. If only I hadn't drunk so much. If only I had woken up sooner. Still, the fact remains, I survived the fire, but at what cost? The first time I saw the house, I thought it was perfect. It had spacious rooms, beautiful hardwood floors, and a charming backyard. My husband and I agreed it was a dream come true, so we put in an offer and, to our delight, got the place. But circumstances forced us to move on different timelines. He had to stay back in our old state a bit longer to finalize the sale of our previous home, while I flew out ahead to start settling into the new one. I wasn't thrilled about being alone in a brand new house, but I was excited for this fresh chapter in our lives. The neighborhood seemed quiet, safe. My husband would join me in just a few days, and then our real adventure would begin. I spent the first day unpacking boxes and admiring the potential of each room. My voice echoed in the bare spaces, reminding me how empty it felt without him. That first evening, an odd feeling tugged at my senses. It wasn't anything I could pinpoint, just a vague awareness that something was off. Maybe it was just the strangeness of unfamiliar surroundings. I brushed it aside, chalking it up to nerves. After all, I was alone in a house I barely knew. Every creak or groan of the structure felt amplified. Before bed, I decided a quick shower might help me unwind. The water pressure was fantastic, surprisingly so. Yet, as I lathered my hair, I thought I heard a noise outside the bathroom door, a faint scraping, like someone's fingernails against wood. My heart lurched. I froze, listening, but all I heard was the rush of water. Convinced it was nothing, I finished up and stepped out into the hallway, half expecting to find something waiting for me. Of course, there was nothing but empty boxes and shadows. I tried to watch TV to calm my nerves, but my eyes kept darting to every corner of the room. I kept feeling that presence, like I wasn't truly alone. Eventually, exhaustion overpowered my anxiety, and I dragged myself to bed. Sleep came fitfully, dreams swirling with half-formed images of dark shapes in the halls. The next morning, I woke with a headache so sharp it felt like an ice pick behind my eyes. My chest felt tight, and I was uncharacteristically dizzy. I almost tripped on my way to the kitchen. I chalked it up to poor sleep and stress. Making coffee took more effort than usual because my hands trembled, but I forced myself to push through. I had so many boxes still to unpack, plus some minor repairs to coordinate. I couldn't afford to be sidelined by a little headache. As the day wore on, I noticed a strange hush in the house. Not the peaceful quiet of a normal home, but a sort of oppressive stillness that made the air feel thick. Every so often, I heard odd noises, like footsteps in another room, or a door creaking shut on its own. Twice, I sprinted to the foyer, convinced I'd find someone there. Each time, I found nothing. It was unnerving. By the second night, I was struggling to keep my eyes open. My head pounded mercilessly, and I was short of breath. Sitting in the living room, I felt as though the walls were closing in. The overhead light flickered ever so slightly, making my vision swim. Desperate for fresh air, I cracked a window, inhaling deeply. It provided little relief. I decided to call my husband, hoping the sound of his voice would ground me. He answered on the second ring, concern evident when he heard how shaky I sounded. "Are you okay?" he asked. "You sound awful." "I'm just tired," I mumbled. "And it's weird being here alone." "Just a few more days," he reassured me. "I'll be there soon." That night I climbed into bed, the headache now a constant throb behind my temples. The sheets felt chilly, and despite the warmth of the air, I couldn't stop shivering. My eyes slid shut the moment my head hit the pillow, but my sleep was restless. I dreamed that someone stood by the bedside whispering my name. Their voice was distant, muffled by the hum of what sounded like a generator. I wanted to wake, to reach for the lamp, but in my dream I was paralyzed, pinned by unseen hands. When I startled awake, the overhead light was still off, but every shadow in the room seemed to loom larger. I sucked in a breath and immediately felt dizzy again. My heart thundered. Something was desperately wrong. Each inhalation felt like I was breathing sludge. Anxiety spiked, but my limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. I slid out of bed, nearly collapsing onto the floor. Stumbling toward the hallway, I intended to go outside for fresh air, but I only made it a few steps before sinking to my knees, every muscle crying out in fatigue. My mind raced. Could this house be haunted? Am I being attacked by something I can't see? The more I tried to rationalize, the thicker the air seemed to become. Somehow, I managed to crawl to the front door. My vision dimmed at the edges, and I gasped for breath. My hand fumbled with the lock. The door finally swung open, letting in a gust of cold night air. It felt like heaven. I gulped down lungfuls, sputtering as I tried to clear my head. It was enough to keep me conscious until I could call for help. My voice trembled as I dialed 911 on my cell phone, explaining that I felt like I was suffocating in my own house. Within minutes, flashing lights arrived down my street. Firefighters rushed in, and one of them immediately checked the air inside. Another guided me aside, pressing an oxygen mask to my face. He told me, in calm but urgent tones, "Ma'am, it looks like there's a carbon monoxide leak in your home." Carbon monoxide, a silent killer. Suddenly, all the weird sensations, the dizziness, the suffocating pressure, it all made sickening sense. I nearly lost my life because I didn't realize I was inhaling a poisonous gas. There were no ghosts haunting my new home, just a faulty ventilation system or a hidden leak from a gas appliance I hadn't realized was malfunctioning. The paramedics loaded me into an ambulance, the oxygen mask firmly strapped to my face. They told me I was lucky I got outside when I did. A few more minutes, and I might have passed out for good. My mind reeled at how close I'd come to dying, alone, in an unfamiliar house. The illusions, the noises, they were likely the product of confusion and hypoxia. My body had been starving for oxygen, playing tricks on my senses. I spent the rest of the night in the hospital, under observation. My husband caught the first flight out the next morning, his face white with fear and worry when he finally arrived. We held each other tight, and though neither of us said it, we both understood how close I'd come to tragedy. The new house no longer felt like the charming dream we thought it would be. It felt tainted by the memory of gas-induced nightmares. But I survived, and as I lay there in the hospital bed, breathing clean air, I realized that sometimes the scariest things aren't paranormal horrors or intruders in the night. Sometimes it's the unseen dangers, the silent leaks, the odorless threats that lurk right under our noses, ready to strike when we're most vulnerable. I never heard any voices, there were no spirits, yet the house had nearly claimed me before I'd even started my new life. The realization chilled me to the bone, and I whispered a silent thank you to whatever faint instinct had pushed me to open that door just in time.